Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Growing Up Alien. Today we have a special guest that I've been meaning to bring on. We've been having some scheduling and other crazy things. So Semjase is here today, and we're going to do a little bit of a history I thought we'd start with that because she's going to come back for a few different meetings. But yeah, today we're going to start with some of her, or not. We're not going to say much about it. I know she wants to say more, but I just don't want to do that. So. But some of her early work and what her mission was when she first came here in the famous Beamships, as they were called. So we're just going to open that up for her. S- yeah, so I want to ask you first. Um, your father was involved, correct? She said, yes, my father was originally commissioned to contact with Billy Meier and to begin assisting in the reveal of the benevolent extraterrestrial life forms to the people on Earth. So your father then, right, well, anyway, why did he bring you on? She said, oh, my father had to then go on some other missions. They felt that having a woman, okay, so having a woman come on and provide the information in this case, right, she says, in this case to Billy Meier, she says I would then be working with other humans as well. Okay. She said the sort of the what do you want to how do you want to she's funny stuff. Okay. She says the mojo. I know you're funny, you're cute. So the energy, right? The interaction between right, the dynamics between a male and female. She says, so we decided it was better to have a female contact, which is rare actually. Yeah, she said it was fairly rare to have the female contacts anyway. So how did that fly for you? Okay, so she actually worked with her father a little bit behind the scenes. She says, well, she get ready to come here. Okay, and her role was to, okay, oh, I see. Okay, so she says my role was to, or she's talking here. So her role was to begin to introduce to humanity, the Earth humans, right? In humanity, some of their history and some of the long-standing contact between not just she's them, of course, the Arahel, but also the other races that have come on this planet, including the negative ones. She said she had to be careful. So, because I remember there was some controversy concerning these texts, right? About what you allegedly said, because I'm going to say what's written in those books and what you said. We're not going to get involved with that because I don't want to. She says, yes, there's been some discrepancies. I think we're going to be clear, right? But I know there's discrepancies to what you said and what was written down in the books, right? But that wasn't necessarily deviant or anything like that. It was just sort of right, a misunderstanding. Okay. So she said she wanted to be a little bit careful with the revealing of the negative extraterrestrial contact on this planet. She was worried that the contact she was talking to would not be able to understand or handle it very well. And well, I mean, I think agree. Yeah, like she says too, it just would have been, and I agree with her, would have been, just not received well by the public. It would have sounded like sci-fi over the top. This idea of an alien invasion. Yeah, I totally agree with you. She's remember it yeah, at that time. Yeah, that was pretty weird. She was super weird, super difficult. I think that was your major hurdle, wasn't it? Trying to overcome sort of the status quo, what people were thinking versus what you wanted to share as information. Extremely difficult. Yes. The mindset, people just weren't really, she's like receptive to this idea that there's life off of Earth, and they were still involved in the little green men concept. I know I always, I always talk about that, little green men. What else did you want to add about, yeah, she said there was such a wide gulf between people's everyday lives, they were so immersed in just a narrow window of understanding of what existence is all about, and that the idea that there was anything off planet was completely alien to them. That's good. Yeah, that's good. Um, yeah, it was that was really like I can't even imagine. Just yeah, it was almost impossible. I was gonna say that because we're talking a time before computers or anything like that. Yeah, she's exactly. And yeah, she's the technology gulf was so intense. I mean, I really think, and I'm just going to throw this at you, Semjase, I think that was the main issue here that we're talking about is that the technology, the understanding. So people have to take this. I'm just going to talk to the audience for a second because the people have to take into account the time period that we're talking about when you were first, meeting with some people here on Earth, right? Yeah. So they had no idea whatsoever about, craft, how they ran. And I know you tried to describe that. Yeah, absolutely. I tried to describe how the craft worked, but I just don't, I think just you showing it going over your head. Yeah. I don't think a lot of people had understanding of that kind of electrogravitic propulsion systems at that time, right? Just like, yeah. No. And even in the movies, right? The movies that they watched that the CGI was so poor and everything. But they didn't know anything else. So yeah, I think you were just sort of, yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. I mean, so she just said, I think people have to understand, the real difficulty involved here was actually in, well, yeah, we're going to take it back a few steps. She says, yeah, really, this has to do with the technology that was withheld from the people because, yeah, there was such, there's a chasm, between, right? Um, the kind of technology that they were trying to show or introduce, and that's what you were doing with your ship, right? Wasn't she says, yeah, we're showing the ship, but I just think it was not. I mean, I think it had impact for sure. She says, yeah, of course. But yeah, okay. She says, coupled with that technological gulf where the people on Earth in the 70s, blah blah, right? It didn't have access to even understanding this kind of technology, this off-planet technology, even though it was on planet, exactly. Even though it was here, um, it was just too foreign, too exotic. And yeah, I guess right. I mean, is this concept of magic, which I think was a main issue, right? She's, yeah, people would just see these UFOs and the ships and they would kind of like either disregard it or just be frightened and not think anything of it. And again, I remember too, of course, some of these were the bad guys. Just, oh yeah, of course, right. Yeah. But your ships, right? She says, yeah, she says they just saw it as sort of magic and they didn't understand it. And I think that was the problem with some of these videos of your ship, right? Yeah, she said everybody just know it's fake, right? I mean, exactly. Exactly. I think that wasn't, would you consider that the main hurdle? She says, well, no, I mean, yes and no. She says, because the main hurdle was if she thinks, okay, so if she says, if people just understood the technology and that what we were flying was just technology, then I think the acceptance would have been a lot easier. She says, but the problem was the fact that your average person at the time didn't understand anything about this technology. So to see something like this, even in person, but especially to see it in a video clip or photo, she says it was impossible for your average person to actually process cognitively what they were seeing because it just looks fake. It does. I mean, exactly. I mean, it looks weird, a ship hovering there and yeah. So she says that was the main issue is she says cutting through the preconceived notions and just the strangeness of seeing something like this at that time was just she almost says like nearly impossible. I'm gonna say, and I know you agree, that even though at that time it felt impossible, right? Exactly, because it was pretty frustrating for you. I wasn't even here. Well, that's at some points during the original, like you think about Howard Menger and some of those other contacts in the 50s and 60s, and going back even further than that. Yeah, it was just like she says like a civilization gulf, but it wasn't. And this, I think you want to make a point here. I think it's really important. We'll bring it out now. Is that the technology civilization gulf was actually artificially placed upon the Terrans, the Earth humans, right? That's what you said. So to make sure I just got that correctly. Yeah. Okay. So you said that. She's showing me like something being pressed. Yeah. So she says, it was suppressed. I'm sorry about that. Yeah. Sorry. That's my mistake. Suppressed. She says, humanity's development on this planet was deliberately suppressed, violently suppressed, right? Yes, yeah. Violently suppressed. She's showing me, she's trying to clarify by showing her hands pushing down on something. Sorry. Sorry about that. Yeah, she's loud. Um, yeah, there wasn't anything, and she wants to be clear for you guys. She says there's nothing necessarily wrong with you per se. There's nothing wrong with humans. She says, no, I mean, this is nonsense. She says, and it's very difficult for her to, because I tell you about some of these things. She's, yeah, and she sees some of these things. She says, it's very difficult for me to, hear and see all of this propaganda because it's really, she's giving me the sensation of like, so you guys understand how telepathy works, right? So when we're talking, I'm hearing her speak, but I'm also getting like literal thoughts put into my head. So I have to kind of translate what as she's speaking, what she's saying with the heavier message that she's sending me behind the scenes. So yeah. Um Terrible, right? She's, there's this she says, you guys, the Earth humans, she says, have been, brutally attacked. And this attack she's saying music is so hurtful on so many levels. We can talk about the economic stuff initially, right? So yeah, she says one of the main ways in which, you guys were just living, hand to mouth, yes, English, right? Yeah, right. The survival here, she says, yeah, we want to be careful about some of the, she's the belief systems. Yeah, let's call it belief systems. Because it's not her intent, my intent, or anybody's intent to attack anybody's, right, beliefs and blah blah. Anyway, so but we mean the overarching. There's an overarching belief system. Yes, she says this created a very narrow window of viewing or understanding. I guess maybe most people would understand that as what we would call 3D, right? Yeah, yeah, like a 3D. But it's not 3D. I know it's not. She's like, don't feel bad about 3D. Like, I know. You can live. She says, we exist, right? We're 40. We're not even 3D. We're 40. Come on, there's time, folks. I don't know. Yeah, exactly. This concept that Earth is a 3D planet. Like, no, it's 4D. There's time. It's like there's time. It's also 2D because you have, the images on a computer screen are 2D, right? It's like, so, yeah, I mean, we're 4D beings, exactly. And she says it's really yeah, closing off of understanding. Well, it's basically the mental prison, really, right? So yeah, she says there's this mental block that was put, and it's not the people's fault, exactly. It's there was put upon humanity. That was done on purpose. So Ika was talking about the genetics, right? And she's yes, absolutely, that was done as well. But she says that's almost so her perspective is slightly different. I'm only going after him. So you want to say that she says that the genetic implication really was sort of symbiotic. It went hand in hand. I like your perspective. Oh, we're gonna go after. Yeah. She says women, right? Oh, I know. Um, so she says she says it's symbiotic. As the genetic discrepancies or manipulations, she says, were happening, with the assistance of this mind control that was going on, which was keeping people's minds small, which is keeping them kind of, I always say it's like looking through sort of a tunnel, like a, paper towel tunnel, right? Yeah, like a tunnel vision. Yeah, she says they weren't able to understand or see, and that was done on purpose. They were blocked, right? I mean, absolutely. She says, this is a blockage that was done because humanity itself, had it not had this blockage, right, which goes way back, right? Yeah, um, would have allowed the society to progress very differently. So so she has a slight addition, and Ika will agree with you. He says, yes, she says, yeah, you had the genetics with the philosophy, the mindset, right, which was placed upon people to keep them from seeing the bigger picture, of course, right? She says, so when my flag, let's move forward, right? So going back to when you were working, yeah, she says that's what was the main hurdle, and she says that was part of the mission was to sort of overcome this hurdle to try to like she feels like like grasping at straws to try to convince humanity to see beyond what was in front of it because they weren't even seeing what was in front of them. No, she says they weren't even seeing reality. Yeah, and that's exactly what yeah, humanity wasn't even seeing reality. Correct. I like that. Yeah, so she goes on to say, yeah, so this was the biggest gulf. And and she was saying, I don't really I did say a lot of the history, she says, but I don't think a lot of it went through correctly. About the occupation, about the negative extraterrestrial, right, situation here on Earth. Yeah, I agree. I don't think the average person would have been able to even process that. I just don't think it would have hit. It would have not have landed. You could have said it, but it wouldn't have made any difference, right? Um, so, oh, you want to bring there was one thing that she wanted to bring up, this idea that somehow, okay, she's okay. She want to bring up the idea that somehow humanity's concept, you have this idea of ascension, which is going to take a long time. She says, you don't have a long time. I asked her, yeah, exactly. She's, that is, so the idea, okay. Okay, it's complicated. So we're going to break it down. Um, the, the social ascension concept, right? The civilization, the culture's ascension, the earth culture's ascension concept, right? That was hijacked by, she said we were trying to bring that forward, was more of an actual, she says, very, concrete concept of awareness. She says, that's what we were trying to bring forward. She says, however, it was hijacked by, I can't say by, we all know who, yeah, by the bad human ET alliance. Let's call it that. Let's see, she agrees. So the idea she was very, very concrete concept. And this was Val Thor as well. He was talking about, she's absolutely, yeah. So Val Thor was bringing this forward to the political system. Obviously, they weren't going to buy it. Exactly. Obviously. But it was very concrete. And I'm just going to remember what Val was talking about, we were going to, not, well, me, actually in Val's time, I was still on Era. Yeah, the technology, she says, is that's what we want to bring forward for humanity, which was the main way of alleviating and at the same time pushing forward the consciousness, right? The thinking process, right? Because she wants to be very clear. This is not a woo-woo kind of thing. It's an actual process. Spirituality is not what you think. She says it's very concrete. And this is what we were trying to bring forward, she says, and I said that, right, and that is what Val was talking about, what he was trying to show, as well as many other ET races, right, that were meeting there with the political system at the time, that by alleviating suffering and hunger and all disease and all these kinds of things and clearing up the planet and bringing new propulsion systems, this is all very concrete stuff. And, none of this was woo-woo, folks, right? She was saying that, yeah. That would have been the thing to launch humanity forward, because the main problem with humanity, and it still is, which is what we're going to have to talk about in a bit, is the survival issue. So as long as humanity is kept in survival, you don't have the time to think about anything in any different way, because your time is spent just trying to feed yourself and pay your rent and all that kind of thing. And that was the whole goal of the system, is to keep you trapped in this loop of survival. Because, right, exactly, I'm going to use my term here. I'm not going to use yours, even though you like to laugh at saying, so right, your average person, who the fuck cares about aliens and spacecraft when you're trying to pay rent and you're probably going to be homeless in a month? You don't give a shit about, these people on other planets. Correct. And that's what they did. That's what they're still doing. Right? Because for your average person, talking about extraterrestrials is just fucking idiotic. Like, what kind of asshole cares about little green men and all that stuff? Because they don't understand the real reason of the extraterrestrials and what they're trying to do for this planet. And it makes, and I don't, and no one here is blaming those people. They make because they're trying to survive. And you can woo woo all you want, and we're both going to share this conversation. All this idea of ascendancy and solar flares and all these, that doesn't mean anything to your average person who's trying to feed themselves, who's trying to pay their bills, who's trying to stay afloat. And that's the war we're in. So she says she wants to say that a lot of this spirituality stuff, she's not all of it, and there's nothing wrong with it. She's not judging it. She's just be very mindful. She says that a lot of this spirituality stuff, which actually, I'm going to say, infiltrated some of what you were trying to do. She says, "Oh my God, yes." You're using, she's so cute. She uses like the word I use. Oh my God. She says, "Yes." That was the main battle that she had, was this just like all of this spirituality concepts, like she says that was just, she says, I couldn't get through. I couldn't get through to what I was talking about because it just became a spiritual thing. And I don't know what you want to say about that. Besides, like, she said it was just a mindset. It was just a mindset. And she couldn't break it. She couldn't break through. And that was the main thing that troubled her. Right. That was the main thing that you felt really frustrated about the whole situation with the work that you were doing, is that humans just turned it into kind of some kind of spiritual thing. Yeah, she says, yeah, that we were like, so advanced and so beautiful and so this and so that and so this and the humans were so broken. And she's, and I just couldn't I could not break through that concept. Yeah, I think we're still fighting that now. She says, yeah, we're still fighting. I think it's better. Yeah, she says it's better. She says, but if anything, she's, yeah, she says your survival, okay, depends on you not always trying to create some kind of like superiority complex thing. She's, that was the mind control programming of the very advanced extraterrestrial alliance with the negative humans. As long as they could keep you in this, what do you want to, cult? I always say cult, right? I mean, yeah, she says it's, yeah, she says it's okay. She says it's deeper than that. It's almost, she says it's like a broken record that people have inside their heads, that there's something wrong with them, that the extraterrestrials are more advanced. She says that somehow they have to do something to fix that they're broken. She says it's deep inside their like consciousness and almost way of, yeah. She says where they feel like they have to fix themselves and do all these different things. And she says to be, how about, yeah, to be ready. And she says, none of that's true, please. She says she's begging you. She's begging you. Don't fall for that. That is the propaganda system that has been placed on you by the negative ETs with the all right, the regressive humans. Okay, she's in all of their institutions, right? Yeah, yeah. So it's just a matter of breaking free of that. Yeah, she says. Yeah, she says. We're just like you, and it's just technology, which you already have, which we have now. Well, they had then, but now we really have it. She's right. Yeah. She says you are now at a very receptive time, um, to understand what you're seeing. And she wants all of you to, step forward, because this is kind of what their mission, right? This is, yeah, this is really your mission now, you guys, right? You want to talk about, let's okay. The starseed envoy systems, yeah. She says, so the problem that she just addressed, right? That humanity was just not going to be, was not, there's no way. There was no way, right? I mean, there was no way that the average person was ever going to break free. She says, so what they did was initially, the only way was to bring in these beings, which is probably most of our listeners, right? um, from other star systems, and not just other star systems, right? Well, you guys, of course, we're working with other star systems, but there's others as well. Yeah. Um, who would have the ability to transcend the severe mind control systems that were in place on the planet Earth. And it was the only way. Right. She says, because see, the extraterrestrials couldn't lead by example. She says we tried, but there was no way that we could break through the propaganda information system that was here on this planet. It was far too successful. And the beings that were living here, the Terrans, were incapable, not by any fault of their own, she says, but all the locks and chains that were put on top of them. They had been completely subdued, and there was no way that they were ever going to free themselves alone, and even with extraterrestrial help, without an actual right, without real problems. She says, so what the Harakashis and the councils and the federations, what they had come up with was this concept too, as you already know the story, right? They already know the Starseed mission. And she says, now is the time for you guys. You're to step forward. We've recently, she says as well, seeded. You had on a heavy, okay, and she says we've on a heavier level now. Actual extraterrestrials born on, right? So actual off-planet people inserted by the thousands into our society, walking amongst us as right now more than ever, she says. In order to really, she's like, push, lift up, like, oh, okay, she's showing me that's a great way of doing, like, she said, okay, so there's say you have a dinner table set with all the placings and the glasses on there, and then you pull the tablecloth free, like in a magic trick, and all the placements all lands on the table, and the tablecloth is now free. She says, this is what we're doing. So she's very tricky. Yeah, it's very complicated and very tricky. I say very slow, and she says, yeah, she's yeah, it's too slow. I hate the grace, too slow. But she says your job now is to, definitely get out there and okay. She says, when you see all that stuff on the social media, yep. I say, okay, yeah. She says, that she's showing me all these images. Okay, you guys, how you're watching social media, TikTok, whatever you guys like, Instagram, and you're seeing people post on these orbs and drones and all that UFOs and all that kind of stuff. She says it's really important that you then, she says, being very diplomatic, she says that you control the narrative. She says it's absolutely imperative right now that you guys step forward. So if you're watching a social media show, whatever, right, on talking about UAPs and talking about extraterrestrials, right? Okay. That you use your knowing. She says, you already know this stuff, guys. She says, it's in your memories. She says, not, yeah, exactly. She says, not coming to you from outside sources. She says, please. She says, please. She's like, please remember. She says, what's in your memories of who you are and where you came from. The different star systems, she says. So she says, use that memory, she says, and use diplomacy, she says, yeah. And to comment and to share. She says, even if that's the only thing you do, she says, just be really clear about sharing the truth about those images that you see. And to dispel, excuse me, that's me, sorry, not her. And to dispel any of the counterintelligence narratives that are being placed over those things. She says, that's your job. Yeah, she says this is all a war of psyop. I mean, there's a technical side to this war. There's a military side to this war. She says, but what she's working with and what you guys are working with is all what we are working with. Our side is all psyop. Okay, you're the spies. She says you're the you're the spies breaking into the system. Yeah. So that's where we are now, right? Yeah. So well, that's the operation, right? We've now overcome those initial problems, right? Yeah. So people are now receptive through many reasons. She says, yeah, the media, the movies, and blah blah, and all the new technology and the trickling out of the new technology. So now people are more receptive to understand what they're seeing, right? Okay. Yeah. So that hurdles yeah. I know. It was a truth party. It was just it was insane. Okay, before we run, I wanted to bring up one thing. Yeah, I want to bring up the survival stuff again to you. Okay, so the day-to-day living aspects that humans are negatively positioned. The fact that you have to, buy food and pay rent. All right. She says this was the main way in which a lot of humans were funneled into negative systems because you're the necessity of survival and the impediments. She says, see, there were so many blockages and impediments put in front of you so that you actually couldn't feed yourself or house yourself. And the homelessness was all real. All these things were real for people. And there's so many people on this planet that were cast very deeply into, poverty, right? All these kinds of situations that they ended up, she wants to make it clear, people don't choose. She says, yes, it's a choice, but she says it's when you're faced against a rock and a hard place, she says, survival is survival. And that is what they did. She says, that's not something that you're doing. She says that your free will on this planet has been so twisted up that, she says, she wants to take an example of her free will concept. So you have someone who's living in extreme poverty with literally no options, really. I mean, and they're mind controlled, and they're desperate. She says, see, that's how their free will was manipulated. She says, because they want you to be in strife. They want you to have this concept of hierarchy. They want you to see yourself as less than, as a slave class. They want you to strive for wealth and showing off and ego. She says that's how they did it. And so so it's not really free will. She says it's sort of free will, yeah, but not really. So she says, stop being so hard on yourselves, because you were victims of a lot of nasty things. So part of the planetary cleanup is going to be on a social level, she goes on and says. And that's what Val, and so this is what Val was talking about. So the way the earth is going to be sort of liberated and real free will is going to be sort of inserted. She says you can't have really, I mean, it's very hard to have actual free will and liberation when you're just trying to feed yourself and house yourself. She says that's nonsense. And, that's going to have to go. So a lot of the technology and also the medical, right? Yeah. She says sicknesses and all these kinds of things, right? You have to remove the poisons and have accessibility to healing people on so many levels, healing them on a financial level, what you call which is we're not going to have finance. You're going to have to start to rethink some of that, but allowing them to have access to food and shelter, all the basic simple things that we need, right? She says that all has to be addressed and be made available. She says no one should have to do that. That is not a free will society where you have to fight to find food. She says that's ridiculous. So all that's going to be liberated. All that has to go. Yeah. No, she says it's going to be, it's really all about comfort and really support and assistance for the people in order to move forward here. So I think you want to end it kind of on this one. And we can kind of, yeah, we can kind of move forward with some more, in-depth topics. We'll kind of work on that behind the scenes in a bit, right? Yeah. So she says, I mean, I think your main point ending here today. She says, yeah, she says, please understand the suffering and victim sort of that was you're impaled, like, yeah, in these kind of situations. And she says, stop being so hard on yourself. Stop thinking that there's something wrong with you. There isn't. She says, you're surviving. She says, this is so wrong and this is so bad and you shouldn't have to do this. It's not okay. So she says, don't be beating yourselves down on all this stuff. She says, and realize that, she says, we're not judging you at all. She says, if anything, we have intense compassion for you guys. So she says, just be very discerning and use common sense. Okay, she says, please, when you think about the extraterrestrial, right, us, right, the good ETs, she says us, right? She says, please understand, we are not judging you. We have the utmost respect for you and the struggles, the unbelievable, insurmountable struggles that you go through on a daily basis. She says, we have unbelievable like compassion for you. No one is judging you. She says, don't ever follow or listen to someone who's judging you and says that you're broken. And she says, you're not broken. You need help. She said, You need help. You're just she's showing this tidal wave of suffering. She's like, God, no, right? You need help. Um, and that's what we're doing. And that's what we're going to be doing, right? She says that's not putting you in any sort of weaker stand position at all. She says you need this lifted, and there's no way you can do this on your own because all of the she says the reason you can't do this on your own, she says you certainly could do this on your own if you had all the technology that's being removed from you, that's being held back from you. You could do this on your own, but you can't do this on your own because you're in a place where you don't have access to the tools that you need. Yeah, she says you're throwing sticks and a rock at, right? This it's great quantum scalar, weaponry. She says it's impossible for you to do that. So you need, she says, the help from your friends and family, right? To overcome these things. She says, so please never, at least she says, stop. She says, stop. Stop judging yourself. Stop shaming yourself. You did nothing wrong. And she says, be so wary of anyone who blames you for what happened to you. She says, it never was your fault. It never was your fault. All right, I think we should end it. Yeah, she loves, she's like, she always like Ika. She's oh, she's like, yeah, she says, we got you. She's just never, we got you. We're back here. We got you. We'll talk about how complicated it is next time we meet. Yeah, she's, and like, and I want to just infer, like, I got hit bad, and I got hit a lot. These guys are bad, and you guys get hit. I get hit. Upstairs gets hit. Right? It's really bad. Um, but we're gonna overcome that. So we'll talk a little bit more about some of the other concepts next time, right? All right. She says yes. She says what oh, you're gonna say what she's gonna say. She says let's say what Frank says. Frank Chili, right? So we'll see you guys upstairs.